Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Voices of Recovery. I'm your host, Michele Eich, and this is my book, How to Kill an Addiction, Recovery with God. In this book, I talk about how to develop a relationship with God and then walk out of any life-controlling issue, and we all have them, as well as 20 powerful testimonies of real people who have done just that. So I'd love for you to check it out. But every week I interview somebody who has overcome a life controlling issue. And this week, my guest is Katie. Katie, welcome to Voices of Recovery.
I'm so honored to be here with you, Michele. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So would you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. Hello, everybody. So my name is Katie Lane. I'm based out of California, originally from Oregon. And I am one of 5 kids. I was raised in a household of people, a very loving family, but almost everyone in my family struggled in some way or another with alcohol addiction.
Mhm.
And that's a lot of why I'm here to tell my story today with
Sure.
Michele. I grew up in that type of environment, and lo and behold, in my late teens, early 20s, developed my own problems with alcohol and really battled with it for a decade until I finally found a method that worked for me. So I'm so honored to be telling my story with you today, because one thing I mentioned to you earlier is that, I've just had so many people come to me and say they've been praying for an answer to
Mhm.
their alcohol addiction and they were shown this information. And so I'm just, this is one of many options. There's many paths, I think, to recovery, but I'm just grateful to be able to share this with your audience and with you
Absolutely.
today.
Absolutely. Well, Katie, I love that. And I feel like we could really learn something from everyone's journey. When I have a guest who's talking about maybe childhood abuse or, you know, uh, getting introduced to drugs and alcohol at an early age. I mean, I have somebody whose dad literally trained him to deal drugs, uh, even if you didn't personally experience that yourself. I just love to hear the stories of people and how God has worked in their lives. And I just feel like we can get encouraged and learn something from everyone's story, no matter what method God used to set them free.
Oh my gosh, so true. And it's the story that really inspires and moves me as well, because that's what really fed me throughout my whole recovery journey. And that's why I love your podcast as well, because you get into the depth of people's stories. And I think there's so much wisdom that we can glean from that. So I totally agree.
So true. I could listen to testimonies all day, every day. And I think that's going to be a really fun part of heaven. Just like,
Yeah.
well, how did God intervene in your life? We'll have plenty of time to do that, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I want to share the stories because I want to give people hope that transformation is possible. When they feel in a stuck place and you feel hopeless, like nothing's ever going to change and you've tried everything, and you can hear somebody's testimony, that is just so encouraging. And that's why we do what we do at Voices of Recovery. So I'm so thankful that you reached out to me. And I really want our audience to hear your story. So let's just go ahead and dive in, okay?
Yeah, I'm ready to tell it.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so you mentioned that you were one of 5 kids and each of you kind of had struggles. So was there like a lot of alcohol in the home, and was it kind of an environment conducive to drinking and things like that?
Somewhat. My mom quit drinking when she was pregnant with me, actually. Like that was back when people would drink, I guess, when they were pregnant. So
Yep.
she quit drinking when she was pregnant, and my dad continued to drink. He quit finally through Alcoholics Anonymous when I was about 8 or 9, and they were separated before that.
Okay.
But I was raised with a dad who drank a lot, so it wasn't necessarily in my house a ton, but he would go to bars and come home or things like that. And then siblings and stuff, we were all kind of raised in the type of environment where it was like a badge of honor to hold your liquor and, stay
Yeah.
around the bonfire till 4 a.m. and all of that. And
Okay.
so I grew up with this mindset that, hey, it's kind of cool to have a strong liver and be able to hold your alcohol.
Sure.
And yeah, that was the beginning of a destructive cycle for me for many years.
Yeah, I mean, things that we kind of joke about, I've seen little cartoons like at the beginning of the weekend, hey, liver, I apologize to you in advance, just like things like that.
Yeah.
And I guess it can be funny, but when you have a serious problem, it's not funny. And just like many addictions and life controlling issues, it all kind of starts out as fun and you're enjoying it and it's not really a problem until it is a problem. And then you feel like you're in a stuck place and you really can't control it. So Katie, how did things progress for you? I mean, did you start drinking as a young kid, like early teens? A lot of kids experiment during those times.
Yeah, I did, kind of like high school time. But the thing was,
Sure.
is I didn't really like drinking at that time. I would have, drinks with friends at parties. We would sneak alcohol or something, but I could go weeks or months and not want it again. And the issue really came for me in my early 20s when I got into a relationship with a man who was a very heavy drinker. And
Okay.
over time, I gradually adopted his behaviors. And,
Mhm.
kind of like what you were saying, it was a phase I felt like I was going through, like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do at this age. I'll get over it, one day,
Right.
or I won't drink as much. But after a few years of that, I remember trying to like take a break from drinking, thinking like, oh, okay, this is a bit much. Let me take a break. And that's when I realized I knew I had a problem because it was so hard. I took 1 week off and it was so hard because I was craving alcohol, thinking about alcohol, like really tempted to drink and like break my week of alcohol free time. So
Okay.
that's was the moment in time where I was like, this is going to be harder than I thought.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the messages out there are live it up. This is your time. And there are just so many messages about alcohol, and it just really everywhere you turn. And it is legal if you're of age, and it's very acceptable. It's acceptable socially. If you've had a bad day, have a drink. If you are celebrating, have a drink. If you've had just a normal day, have a drink, and it just, we are just really bombarded with these messages, and we start believing it and living it. And then like you realize it's more than just a fun thing to do, that you're really kind of developing an addiction. I mean, did you think in your mind the word addiction, or how did you kind of process that? Because we can definitely lie to ourselves and make it seem like, oh, this is really no big deal. Like, you know,
To be honest, I never really thought of it as an addiction, maybe until like the last couple of years of it. But I really just had the belief that I like to drink too much. And one day I'm going to figure out how to not drink too much. And that's part of my testimony I have to share with you today, because I finally did find an answer. But I didn't feel like I was the typical quote unquote alcoholic, because to me, that meant like someone who had lost everything, was drinking out of a
right.
paper bag on the side of the road. And I
Yeah.
think that's part of the issue today is like there's
Mm,
this spectrum. It's now called alcohol use disorder. And
okay.
people can exist at different phases of it. They can be
Sure.
early mild, where they have to have 2 glasses of wine, but they have to have them every day, or they're
Mhm.
drinking 3 bottles of wine every night. And so there's this spectrum. And it's such a personal choice, I think, to decide whether or not you have that issue. And there's no one outside that can tell you you do or you don't.
Mhm.
But I think the issue is, as society, we view it as very black and white. You're either an alcoholic or you're not. And
Right.
so that kept me struggling for a lot longer, because I was like, I don't feel like an alcoholic. I was still functioning in a lot of ways, but it was definitely becoming more and more of a problem gradually over time.
Okay, so it's not necessarily the amount of alcohol you're having, but like you said, if there's a person, you have to have 2 glasses of wine every night, then that's a
Mhm.
form of dependency. It is controlling you.
Yep.
And like you said, we've heard the term functional alcoholic for many years, right? It's like I get up, go to work, I raise my kids, I pay my bills, I'm doing well, I'm succeeding, but it's becoming more and more of a stronghold. And I found in my own life and in the people that I've interviewed for the show, it it's something that it starts on a certain level, but it usually escalates.
Yep.
And that's kind of how the enemy works. He kind of gets you in and it seems innocent and it seems like no big deal, but then it gets to be more of a grip on your life.
Yep.
So during this time, were you a Christian? Where was God in your journey when you were kind of discovering these things and maybe realizing that you had more of a dependence on alcohol than you wanted to?
So I was not a Christian at that time. I wasn't a believer at all. I was raised a Christian, and went to church, was baptized, all that, but it wasn't a relationship with God at that point. I was just going to please my mom, to be honest.
Yeah.
But at that time, I'd walked away from the faith and was not a believer, and was really kind of honestly stuck in the new age for a while, which
Yeah.
that's another story for another time. But
Sure.
um, what happened for me was actually, once I went through the treatment protocol I'm going to share with you today, is that the Lord, he came into my life. I kept getting the thought, like, get a Bible, get a Bible, get a Bible. You call yourself spiritual, get a Bible. And I kept putting it off. And then I saw this testimony on YouTube of someone who was from New Age to Jesus. And so I watched that. And then that was just like a whole whirlwind what happened after that. But what happened for me and what drives me to work in the work that I do now is like, I felt like being stuck in the fog of alcohol addiction, I wasn't even thinking about God. But as I got more clear-headed and got sober, I started to be more curious about that stuff. And I feel like that's when God was able to reach me in a sense, and not to say he couldn't reach people in the pit of hell, because we all know he can, but that for me was like, wow, like, I don't know, of course I don't know what would have happened otherwise, but I just felt like getting clear-headed and getting sober was finally how I came into relationship with our Heavenly Father. And so, wasn't a Christian at that time, but now I do work with a lot of Christians who, as I said at the start of the interview, they're like, I'm praying for an answer and God led me to this. And so it's just, he's using it, I think, as one of his many options to heal people.
Absolutely. And, God wastes nothing. I say it all the time. Even the parts of our journey that we're not super proud of and that were very difficult, he uses it, and he can use it to help other people. And so I love that. And I'd love to have another conversation with you about the New Age, because when I kind of hit a wall with my mess, which my addiction was to a person, not a substance, but it was just as much of a stronghold, because if this person would have jumped off a cliff, I would have jumped off the same cliff. But I share about that in my book, but I don't want to get into that right now. But as I was kind of searching and really just trying to figure out the meaning of life, and I was raised in the church, and I went to Sunday school and all that, but I really did not have a personal relationship with Jesus. And I was definitely seeking, because, when the what hits the fan and it sprays everywhere, you just got to have some answers. And there was a book out at that time called Celestine Prophecy, and it was about the New Age. And I did pick that up. And praise God, I did not go further down that path. And I did come to faith in Jesus. But I think, and this is probably a conversation for another day, Katie, but I think it's worth saying that the New Age does offer power. And that is something that is lacking in a lot of the Christian teaching, even though there is a lot of power in Christianity, and the Holy Spirit is powerful and brings us the power, because we've turned Christianity, our relationship with God, into a religion and taken the power out. Amen. People are looking for an alternative to true faith. Would you agree with that statement, or?
I feel like we could spend hours talking about this.
Okay, we need to do another Zoom call.
Yes, because there is power in the New Age, and what I like, it's the power of who it's coming from. What the Lord showed me as soon as I awoke to it, he's like, you're working for the devil, basically, when you're operating in this space. And so I agree, and I think that for me, honestly, since I've been following the Lord and having a relationship with Jesus, I'm so on fire to bring that fire to the faith and get out of that religious mindset. Because like you, I was raised in that type of church as well. And I never had a relationship. I'm like, why didn't somebody teach me about a relationship with Jesus? Like, I don't remember that at all in church. So.
I know. And it could have been there. I just maybe really wasn't ready to hear it, because I was on my own journey and it was still all fun and games. But yeah, that's so good. And we could have a further conversation, but I think it's worth talking about now, because people are searching, and when they go to religion and they see that it's dry and dead and boring, it's like, I'm not really interested. True relationship with God is not boring at all. There's power, right? There's the fire of God. And I could preach on that. So that's good. Okay. Praise God. So you come to faith, and, I just want to say that with the people that I interview, sometimes they're already Christians, and sometimes they find Jesus through their deliverance. But like we talked about earlier, everybody is on a journey, and I really respect my own journey. I respect your journey, Katie. I respect the journey of the people who are listening, because God knows us so intimately that he knows what we need when we need it. I have 6 kids. They're all different. I don't treat them all the same.
Yeah,
I don't. One, if I raise my voice just a tiny bit, she loses her mind. One, if I scream till I turn blue in the face, he's like, what? I didn't hear anybody talking. But I know that I need to approach them in different ways. And God, as our Heavenly Father, knows exactly how to approach us and what we need as well. And I've interviewed people who have got set free, they just walk away and they're fine. And I meet others who, really are struggling. So again, we're on a journey. God knows us, and I respect it. So on this journey that we're talking about, what are some of the things that you were trying to break free from the craving of alcohol? If you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I really did like dive headfirst into the new age of like, I remember, so I would try to quit drinking like probably dozens of times, and it would make it a couple days, couple weeks. One time I made it 6 months. And what I would do at that time is I would be very extreme. I would go into like super clean diets. I would dive into a spiritual practice, I was really into Buddhism and yoga. Again, that's very new age, just like red flag for anyone watching.
Yep.
So I would dive deep into that and get super, super involved in that. But the thing is, of course that wasn't truth because it wasn't from God. Yeah. And it was always such like an extreme for me. It was like either black and white. I was either in full self-destruct mode with my drinking, or I was in full health and fitness, spirituality mode. And so it wasn't very sustainable. And I felt like I had to do it in an extreme way because my mind was constantly craving alcohol. And I would realize that the longer I would go without alcohol, the more I would crave it. And that is something that with the method I'm going to share with you, that's what it heals inside the brain, is it gets to the root cause of the alcohol use disorder, which is actually inside the brain. It essentially hijacks our brain. And so but this physician who discovered it over 30 years ago in Finland in his research, he uncovered something that's known as the alcohol deprivation effect. And that essentially happens because our brains, when you drink over and over again and get that endorphin hit, that pleasure hit, our brain essentially becomes, dependent upon it. And so it resets the pleasure centers in our brain. And so as soon as we take alcohol out, it kicks into craving mode. And our brain thinks we need it in some sense for our survival. So many people, you could talk to them, they're like, I'm 2 years abstinent, but I still think about alcohol every day. I'm still afraid that I'm going to drink today. And so that's what I battled with every time I tried to quit drinking. And it would be extremes. Like, I'd either be in self-destruct or like self-improvement. And then eventually I would fall back into self-destruct mode. But I did try AA. I only went to a couple of meetings because the group that was local was it was like men that were like 50 years older than me and just like a rough crowd. And I was like, this is not right. I would do spiritual retreats, again, red flag, not from the Lord. I would do, diets, meditation, try to do hypnotherapy, just white knuckling, like, okay, I can do this time, and everything just kept leading me back to drinking again.
Wow. Well, I appreciate your honesty with that, Katie, because I really feel like that's going to help people. And when I hear you talking about these cycles of what you were doing, all of that becomes so incredibly exhausting.
Yes.
I call it the hamster wheel, right? That little hamster is just running, but he's not going anywhere and he's exhausted. And yet that's where a lot of people live. They get a little bit of success, feel good, then fall, then try to white knuckle it, come back up, do it again, fall again. And so, I think that's where a lot of people are. And that's really interesting about how the brain works and the cravings and everything. Wow. And like you said, if somebody isn't drinking, like that is not necessarily freedom, because if you're obsessing over it all the time, thinking about it all the time, then it's still a stronghold on you, right?
Exactly.
Because a lot of times we want to just detox people and, oh, they're quit. They've been clean and sober for 6 months or a year or whatever. But have you gotten to the root? You mentioned the root earlier, and that I'm glad you said that, because I'm all about that. If you don't get to the root of the problem, the fruit is not going to go away. And what we do is we manage the bad fruit. We try to pick it off. We try to perfume it. We try to hide it, cover it up, mask it. And when God gets to the root, everything attached to it goes. And that's so powerful. And that's true freedom.
Yes. And I love that you said too, because what the biggest thing for me was I would be sober on the outside and everyone would be like, yeah, good job. But on the inside, I was like, don't go here because there'll be alcohol. Don't see this person because they'll trigger you to drink. Just like constantly on the defense, trying to avoid these things because my brain wasn't fixed. It was still triggered by everything and like a second away from a relapse any day. So I think it's so yeah, important to heal that piece. And a lot of people struggle with that day one over and over and over again. Why can't I get sober this time? So yeah.
And then you get into the condemnation, the feeling bad about yourself, beating yourself up, the guilt, the shame, all of it tied, the enemies in there, stoking the fire. And it is so exhausting. And that's why people just really, they can be depressed. They can be full of anxiety because of these things, not just in addition to whatever they're trying to break free from. But you said just a minute ago, what did you say? Sober on the outside?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's like, that rang my bell right there. Sober on the outside. That's not getting to the root. That's just dealing with the outside, not the inside.
And that pleases everyone around you because you're not touching the substance, but they don't understand, for the most part, what's going on inside that torture of the mental chatter and obsession.
Wow. And it's like a minefield, right? Trying to avoid a commercial or a person or it's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's everywhere. It's in the grocery store. It's at the gas station. It is all over.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so normalized. And that was such an internal conflict I had too, because you see these ads and, wine is so glamorized. And I'm like, I can just have a glass. Like, what's a harmless glass of wine? But for me, 95% of the time that turned into a bottle or more. And so I would be like confused about the messages I was getting about what it meant to be a wine connoisseur. And then like my actual experience with what drinking wine was for me, because I had this disordered relationship with it.
Okay. Interesting. Well, let's talk about this method that you've referred to a couple of times. So you're kind of in this place where maybe you are sober on the outside, but you're just struggling and you're obsessing over it and thinking about it and trying not to succumb to the pressures of really craving that. Sometimes we think, oh, well, I just stumbled upon something, or it was just a coincidence. It's like God is leading, God is ordering our steps. So even if it seems like a coincidence, even us meeting and you reaching out to me, it's not a coincidence. God is ordering our steps. And I love that. So Katie, if you could share what God led you to and how it has changed your life, I really feel like this could help somebody today.
Yes, absolutely. So one hungover morning, like usual in 2017, I would always scour the internet for an answer. I would often watch like inspiring talks from people who had gotten sobriety and just think that like if I got inspired enough, maybe I could commit to it myself. But I happened upon a pretty well-known TEDx talk that exists today by an actress who discovered after she had gone through a medical detox that there is actually a medication that can be taken, which can basically de-addict our brain from alcohol. As I said earlier, the alcohol use disorder really lives inside the brain. Even if you stop drinking and you haven't touched alcohol in 6 months or a year, if that hasn't been healed, majority of people will relapse, or they'll spend years craving and white knuckling and going to 3 meetings a day. And, not to knock that, because whatever path will work for you, but the truth is that that doesn't work for a lot of people. So yeah, I think, of course, God led me to that. But at the time I was like, what? This is too good to be true. It's some actress peddling a medication. I'm not going to take a medication or whatever, but I just became so curious about it and did a lot of research and decided to give it a try myself. And it was the game changer for me, because what this medication does at like the most basic level is you actually still drink on the medication, which is one of the nice things about it, because it really meets someone where they're at. If you're addicted to alcohol, telling someone they can't have it is like, again, if on some level we're equating it to a survival need. So you're like, no, I'm gonna drink. And that's why people do crazy things to get their substance of choice, because they're equating it to a survival need. So the medication really meets you where you're at. And by the way, it's a safe, generic, cheap, effective medication. It's been around for over 30 years. It's not like the pharmaceutical company is making money off of it.
That's a relief, because
yeah. And that's what some people say, like,
narrative, is it? Yeah.
Yeah. Like you can get it for like $20 for a month's supply. If you have insurance, it's free. It's very affordable. Some countries, it's just, you don't even need a prescription. You do need a prescription in the US, but it's more and more accessible now with telehealth. But you basically you take the medication an hour before drinking and you drink on it. And what it does is it blocks the reward your brain gets from alcohol. So it doesn't make you sick or anything, but alcohol just seems a little less pleasurable. And so over time, your cravings for alcohol fade away gradually and eventually get to a point of you no longer crave. If you are drinking, you have control. Like I went from a bottle or more of wine every single night to someone who was drinking 1 glass of wine once a month. And it was just like, I didn't want more than that. That was all I wanted. Eventually I quit drinking because the method worked so well that I was like, I don't even like alcohol anymore, which is a whole different type of sobriety.
That's like a miraculous statement. I mean, just the fact that you're saying that from where you came from, that's incredible.
It's incredible. And it's not just me. This method has been clinically tested and proven to have a 78% success rate. So, you know, AA and rehab style programs have been shown to be a success rate of about 5 to 10%. Some people will say that's not a success rate, that's a failure rate. So there's a 90% failure rate. But this method, it's been clinically proven in over 90 trials, discovered over 30 years ago in Finland. And it's a gradual process. It works, but it works to de-addict your brain so that, you know, your mind is no longer preoccupied with alcohol. And I know you've talked a lot on your channel about getting to the root. And so for me, that gets to the biological root. And that gave me the capacity then to do the work that's required to become recovered. Because it's like, you know, when we're craving alcohol, it's almost like if you're dying of thirst and then you're trying to do a therapy session. It's like, how much are you going to get done when your mind is just like, I need water, I need water. Not a perfect example, but if you're craving alcohol all the time, for me, it was really hard to do that inner work. And this like calmed my mind about alcohol to where I had space to heal.
That's beautiful. So you said that you no longer drink at all. Are you still on the medication? I mean, is this something that you take until it's over, or do you take it for your life?
No, I don't take the medication anymore. It's only taken when you drink. It's kind of like a protection. So you take it before you drink. It protects your receptors. So if you drink, you're not getting an endorphin hit. And so you don't get sick. You can still get drunk if you drink too much, but it becomes less pleasurable. So if I were to ever drink again, I would just take the medication before, and I probably couldn't even finish one drink, because that's where I finished the method. I would have like a half a drink and just not want more. So yeah, a lot of people go on this method with the goal to moderately drink. And I know that kind of like turns traditional belief systems on its head, thinking once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. But when you're healing where the issue lies, which is inside the brain, it makes moderate drinking a possible goal. And a lot of people have the goal to moderately drink, and then they end up going sober after a while because you lose interest in drinking.
Right. Well, I've heard many sermons about, you know, whether or not God wouldn't endorse drinking, and whether or not Christians should drink, and Jesus made wine, and you know, all of that. And so I don't want to get into those conversations today, but I think if Jesus made wine, he probably intended for people to drink it. But you know, everybody is different. And so I know people who can have a glass of wine occasionally, and it's not a big deal. And I think that's their walk, and that's fine. But there are people who literally, if they have that glass of wine, will have finished 3 bottles by the end of the night and wake up with a horrible hangover the next day. So it just is a different situation. And again, we're going back to respecting the journey of other people and respecting their relationship with God, and where their beliefs lie, right? You know, there are certain things that God doesn't want us to do, period. But I think alcohol is one of those things that it's a personal choice. You have a relationship with God, and you also know you. So there's that too, right? Okay. So you listened to the TED Talk, and you shared that with me, and I did watch that, and that was very interesting. You shared the TED Talk, and you watched it. So then did you go to a doctor to get this? I mean, how did you get the medicine? And because I'm not promoting this for everybody, this is not for everybody watching, but there's somebody watching who maybe is saying, I have literally tried everything. I'm exhausted. I can relate to what Katie's saying. I want to know what I need to do to try this for myself. So what would be the steps that a person would take to get this prescription?
So in 2017, when I started on it, there were not very many doctors that knew about it, to be honest. So if you go to your general practitioner like I did, they might say no, simply because a lot of practitioners are not trained in addiction, and they're kind of trained to just send people to AA.
Sure.
And so that does happen even today. But sometimes they're general practitioners, like, sure. Um, there are a lot of telemedicine doctors available now. So you can do a video appointment just like this, and they will prescribe it, either mail it to your house or you can have it sent to your local pharmacy. So there's a lot more options that exist
Sure.
like that out there now.
Right.
And I will say, so the medication, I haven't mentioned that yet. It's called naltrexone. And there is a way to take it where it's taken daily with abstinence, and it's supposed to help with cravings. However, the data doesn't show that it's very effective with that. The real magic happens when it's taken in the targeted dose with drinking, because you're basically unlearning the behavior of alcohol equals pleasure. Because when you drink on it, it's not pleasurable. So sometimes doctors might say, take it every day, but don't drink, or take it every day. So there's a very specific protocol. It's known as the Sinclair Method. And so there's a specific way to take the medication for it to be most effective, which is what that TED Talk was about. That was that specific method. And so in my work, like, I've been a coach in this field for 3 years, and we also offer a program to kind of guide people through the use of it, and also the behavior, habit, lifestyle, spiritual coping side of it. Because if I get pushback from people, they're like, yeah, right, a pill's gonna fix everything. And the pill doesn't fix everything. I say it's 50% of it. And then the other 50% is the recovery work. So that's something for people to keep in mind. Like, the medication is a really good starting point. But yeah, aware that there are habit, lifestyle, especially I was drinking heavily for 10 years. So I definitely had habits around drinking that I had to change and learn new ways to cope and all of that. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So what if somebody's listening and has been, however you want to call it, has quit drinking, is on the wagon, or whatever you want to say, and then, but is still kind of obsessing over it and really struggling and trying not to start drinking again. And then you say, well, you take this pill and then you take a drink. Like, I can just feel the terror that somebody has. Like, you don't understand, like, I can't drink. So how do you kind of overcome that thought process of, you're telling somebody who really has been trying not to drink that it's okay as long as they're taking this medicine alongside of it?
Yeah. And I'm so glad you're asking that, Michelle, because it's such an important point. Like, if someone's abstinent and alcohol free and it's working for them, like, I never say, I keep doing what you're doing, like, that's working for you. But if I've worked with a number of people who were even in AA for 2 years, and they just knew that little voice in their head, they're like, I'm going to drink again one day. It's just a matter of when, because like, this is awful and it's not working, kind of thing. So if someone's in that camp, that's where I definitely recommend like plugging into support, because it is, I worked with a gentleman, he was over 2 years in AA, and he was terrified. He got the medication, it sat on his shelf for like a month, but and it was hard for him too, to like kind of tell his AA people what he was going to do, because that can come with its own challenges. And so it can be a daunting experience. So I just recommend for those people that it can certainly work for you. And this gentleman I'm talking about now, he's on the method, he rarely drinks, like, it's just been a miracle for him. But it's not a perfect transition always, because our brain does remember the pleasure we get from alcohol. So again, like, if you're reintroducing alcohol again, it's really got to be viewed as a treatment program. Like, a lot of pushback I'll get is like, it's just an excuse to drink. And, for someone who doesn't understand the addiction of alcohol inside the brain, like, that's what it can look like. But if someone is serious about their recovery and viewing this as a treatment protocol that has a permanent resolution, not instant, but permanent, where like, my brain feels like restored from the addiction. If they can view it as a treatment protocol and take it seriously, and, be mindful and chart their drinks and all of the different aspects that come along with this treatment program, I think that would be a really smart and wise thing to do. That's a lot of why we, created our program, because I myself even was like, sure, I'll take a pill, that'll fix it. But like a few months in, I was like, oh, it's way more than just a pill. So, but to really think about it and pray about it and seek the Lord if that's a wise option for you, because it really can permanently heal the obsession in the brain.
What a gift that is, because when you obsess over something, no matter what it is, your brain is so occupied over that thing that it's really hard for you to do other things, right? God showed me like the app on the phone. You have too many apps open. And so when you have too many apps open, your phone can't function like it's supposed to. You got to close down some of those apps, and then the phone can do what it's supposed to do, right? And it's the same thing with our brain. When my brain is like fear over here and obsessing over here and worried about the past here, and then I'm like so distracted. I'm really having a difficult time focusing. And I feel like that's where a lot of people live,
Yes.
and if this can release them from that, then that's beautiful. So you mentioned the Sinclair method. Is that something you can kind of talk about, or is it too complex? I mean, can you just kind of give a brief overview of that, just so people are
Absolutely.
kind of aware of what that is?
Yes, absolutely. So it's called the Sinclair Method because the gentleman who discovered it, Dr. David Sinclair, he uncovered this method in research he did in Finland over 30 years ago. And what he discovered was really two things. The first thing is that there's such a thing as an alcohol deprivation effect. So like I mentioned earlier, it's if you quit drinking, but your brain has already been dependent on alcohol, you take the alcohol out, but your brain kicks into craving mode because it's deprived of something it's become dependent upon. And that's why someone can be a year sober and one relapse will send them off. And again, that craving, like you see people go into rehab for 30, 60, 90 days and they come out and 2 days later they're drinking again because their brain is still craving. So he discovered this alcohol deprivation effect that exists with people when they're dependent on alcohol. So that was part of his research. The other part was what's known as pharmacological extinction, or just extinction for short. And that is the Sinclair method. So what it means is that over time, by taking the naltrexone medication before you drink and drinking on it repeatedly, what you're doing is extinguishing the alcohol addiction from your brain because it's blocking the reward you get from drinking. And if you think about anything in life, if it's not rewarding, you're going to do it less and less. You go to a restaurant, the food isn't that great, you probably won't go back that often.
Right. Yep.
So same thing with drinking. Like, and people often ask, do I still get drunk? Does it make you sick? No. And in fact, I enjoyed drinking more on the Sinclair method because I had control. I could say I was going to go out for a glass of wine and have a glass and not get intoxicated, which you were talking about drinking as a Christian, personal choice, but like, I know the Bible always talks about being sober minded. So for me, that's like one drink over 2 hours and meal and all of that. So
yes.
So that's the method. Is the Sinclair method is that process of extinguishing the alcohol addiction from your brain. And so that involves repeated drinking sessions on the naltrexone so that over and over again, your brain craves, it drinks, but it's not getting the same reward. So that breaks down those pathways. And then the other side of that is really the habit, lifestyle, behavior change. Because if you're not proactively going out and, having alcohol-free days and getting endorphins from other activities like exercise or food or laughing with friends or worship, you are not going to be able to change your habits and behaviors. So half of it is kind of drinking on the naltrexone over and over again over many months. Typically, it's like an average of at least 6 months. A lot of people, it can take longer for some people. It doesn't necessarily matter if you've been drinking for 40 years or for 10 years. It really goes back to our internal motivation to change, and are we really working alongside the medication treatment to create a life that revolves less around alcohol? And it becomes so much easier to do when your mind isn't preoccupied, like you were saying earlier. It's just so that's the gist. Does that answer your question and clarify about?
That's beautiful. Yes, I love that. Okay. And you said that some people say that this is just an excuse to drink, but I mean, you don't drink anymore, and it sounds like you really don't have a desire to. And when you look at where you came from to where you are now, that is miraculous.
It really is. And the thing is that, drinking on the naltrexone, like I said, I still enjoyed it, but it's not the same euphoria to where a lot of people, they have their first drink and that's just like, we're off to the races. I'm going to drink until I black out tonight. So the medication kind of prevents that, or it does prevent that. And so where people can understand more is that, like, this really is a treatment. It's not the same experience drinking on the naltrexone. Now, if people are really looking to kind of numb out and escape, and again, they're not really viewing this as a treatment protocol, they can still, drink out of habit or out drink the medication. Or just get too drunk on the medication. But the thing is, if they're still taking the medication beforehand, even if you drink too much, because it takes time and we got to give ourselves grace to change these habits, you're still blocking that reinforcement. So you're still working to undo the super highways in our brain that have been driving this behavior over and over and over again.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. If you really want to make changes, if you really want to get well, God will provide a way. And his word says that he will provide a way out. And so this isn't for everybody, but it's for somebody.
Yeah.
And it has been something that has transformed your life. And like so many people that I interview, Katie, now that your life has been transformed, you want to help others and continue the journey and with God. And that's really what it's all about. So I really enjoyed talking to you today. Is there anything else that you would like to add, or anything that you would like to share with our audience before we say goodbye?
No, I mean, I just thank you so much for having me, Michelle. And for people watching, like, don't lose heart. Just keep seeking an answer and you will find it, whether it's this method or something else. And just know that, you know, when we're stuck in the cycles of alcohol use disorder, it can really feel like its own little world. And as soon as you can start to get a glimpse outside of that, it's like there's a whole other incredible life and world waiting for
Yes.
you. So just cling on to that truth.
Absolutely. Well, I will post any links that you want to share with me. I know that you're a coach and you probably would be willing to connect with people who want to reach out to you. I'll also post the information about this medication. And, you know, if this is something that you feel God is speaking to you about, reach out to your doctor, and it could just be as simple as a telehealth call. And then I think it's also important to get support, you know, because you just, it's a little bit of a journey on, you know, regulating it and moving forward with it. So that's awesome. Well, praise God. Well, thank you so much for being our guest today, Katie, and God bless you on your journey.
Thank you, Michelle. God bless you.
Absolutely. And I want to thank our audience for watching this episode of Voices of Recovery. We're creating a safe place where people can go on their journey with God. If you're new, please give us a like or follow. And I am also asking you to share this message out, because I bet there's somebody you know who could really benefit from what Katie said today. So bye, Katie. Thank you and God bless you. And we'll see you next time on Voices of Recovery. Bye-bye.
Bye.